I've never seen anything as artistic and as like powerful as that.
Where I wasn't performing and needed another job. I'd never seen The Lion King. My forearms have got a lot bigger.
Not at the very beginning of your career, was it?
I have absolutely no idea at all. It's completely changing the world.
Hello, everyone. I hope that you're doing well and staying safe during these very hard and unpredictable times in the world. My name is Zagori, and I'm a theater and Broadway blogger, and I would like you to personally welcome you to the 4th edition of Interview with Theater Professional. Today's guest's name is Gary Jordan, and he currently plays the role of Zazu, the bird, in Disney's Lion King on West End. So here are the top 5 facts about him. Gary went to the Guildford School of Acting and graduated in 1997. Gary is a skilled puppeteer experienced in Avenue Q and the Lion King productions. He is a respected pianist and musical director of widely known productions such as Little Shop of Horrors and Hairspray. He has taken part in CBeebies' ZingZillas, voicing Tang and Granite. Gary's biggest job on a massive production has begun actually when he was 40, and it is his current production of Zazu in The Lion King on West End. So, Gary is already waiting to go online. I know that I will ask my questions, but I know that all of us have questions to ask Gary. So feel free to put them in the chat and in the comments, and I will ask them, and Gary will hopefully answer all of them. So, thank you so much for joining me again today, and give it up for Gary Jordan. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Dan. How you doing?
Yeah. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, very good. Great. I like that poster behind you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of Lion King. I've seen it 4 times, 3 times on West End, 1 on Broadway. So yeah, and I have actually seen you in it as well.
You have?
So, yeah, I have.
Oh wow. Well,
yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's start with the first question then. So let's talk about something that is going on in the world right now, actually changing our world at the moment. And
it's completely changing the world.
Yeah.
I think what it's given people the opportunity to think, to sit back, to see what's going on.
I do agree with it. And your musical is actually set in African savannah, and you have 53 actors of different nationalities and cultural backgrounds in your cast. So do you think due to the recent events, your cast will somehow change, or like people, like cultural backgrounds of it will change a bit, or the intensity of the situation and it will change?
And I don't think so. I mean, essentially, The Lion King is a story of Africa. You know, there's a whole song at the beginning of Act 2, which is a celebration of the release of slavery and that kind of thing. And you know, in that, I don't think anything will change other than the fact everybody will be more understanding, everybody will know more, because, as I say, we've had this opportunity to sit back, we've had this opportunity to learn.
Definitely.
We've had time. You know, how many times do you say in a day, "Oh, I don't have time for that"?
I do.
We've had time now.
I do agree with you. And you know, some people, if not all of us, have started doing something new, like taking on some new hobbies. I, for example, started cooking, which I never done before. So are there any hobbies or activities that you took on or like started developing more, perhaps like playing the piano or something like that?
I've played the piano since I was 3 years old, but I haven't really been doing much of that, unfortunately. What I have been doing, which is quite ridiculous, I've been creating and hosting some quizzes online, which started with friends and it started with family, and then it's grown, and then and there's more and more people. And I did a big Disney quiz for the Walt Disney Company just the other day.
Definitely. I have actually seen it online. I have seen it on your Instagram.
Oh, you have? Yeah. You have. It's so much fun, and I think what it does, it gives me a creative outlet. It gives me something creative to do.
So let's talk about Lion King, and your contract, unfortunately, is going to end eventually. And
yes,
in my opinion, with your like background, I was a bit researching your life and stuff, and you have done a lot of like music direction, puppeteering, acting. And in my opinion, your experience can let you to write a book, or like going into the producing, or even moving to another show, or teaching perhaps. So what are your actual plans for the future? What are you planning to do after The Lion King?
Do you know, I have absolutely no idea at all. I think you'll probably have to drag me out of the Lyceum Theatre in a wheelchair eventually, because I think I'd like to stay there for as long as I possibly can, certainly for as long as, you know, I can still physically do the role, because it's the happiest, it sounds cliche, but it's the happiest place on earth. It's the happiest building. We have such a great time. We're
such
all
a combination of great talent as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, and everyone cares so much about the product that we're putting on. And I've known it in other shows, but not quite so much. Everyone is fiercely proud of our show, and it's just a gorgeous place to work. So,
okay, yeah,
maybe I'll play the goat in Wicked one day if anyone's watching.
Yeah, that is a very good role. I like that character.
That would be nice.
It is interesting. So let's move on a bit about your professional life and your childhood. And in your early childhood, you were always seeking to be in professional performing arts. And at the age of 5, you even said that you'd rather gather all my friends and neighbors and all the children would put on a show in one of the back gardens. So in this quote, I can see a bit of like controversial, so it's not really clear about, were you always seeking to direct and be on the creative part of the show, or were you always dreaming to become a star and actually like being the one that everybody looks at?
I'm not sure about being the star and everybody that looks at, but I think performing was definitely in my blood, and not only that, but it's the creation of something that, you know, I really enjoyed. I have done some directing in the past, and musical directing as well, which I've absolutely loved. I think probably first and foremost it was to be a performer. But even dancing around at 5 years old in my parents' garden, I don't think I realized that's what I could do as a profession until I was around sort of 10, 11 years old, and I went to see Les Miserables, and I suddenly realized that with the music background and the performing and everything, I could actually possibly do this for a living. So I hounded my parents until they let me do it.
Yeah. I mean, yes, and you have mentioned now that that musical directing have actually appeared in your life as well. So like productions like Little Shop of Horrors and Hairspray, you've done as a musical director.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that like directing for a professional actor is a bit hard and unusual. So was the move to from professional performing onto the directing linked to some kind of personal disappointment that when you act, you have to follow the instructions of director and producer? Or was it just something that you always wanted to do and you still want to do it? Like
no,
those
I mean,
two things completely?
Not at all. It certainly didn't come from any disappointment. I've been very lucky to work with some fantastic directors that will give you, well, not free rein, because your performance has to be within the confines of, you know, what was originally written. But a lot of the directors I've worked with have let you put your own stamp onto that. And I think the directing and the musical directing basically came out of the times where I wasn't performing and needed another job that would fulfill my, you know, creative urges again.
Okay.
And I found that what I enjoyed most was getting the best performance out of somebody that I could, but whilst giving my knowledge of how I've learned to do it as well, and passing that on was certainly with Little Shop of Horrors. A friend of mine came to see it and said, "Wow, Seymour played that role exactly like you would." I was like, "Well,
that is what the direction is about."
Yeah. It's taking your own ideas and letting somebody else run with those ideas as well, and coming to an agreement.
To me, is like the role of the producer and director is to implement everything and yourself as well into the character. So
absolutely,
yeah,
and a performer as well. You have to bring a lot of yourself into it, otherwise it's not believable. You know.
Yeah. So, like, also in your life, the puppeteering appeared as well on the other side, and you were very famous for your Avenue Q role. And, like, how did puppeteering appear in your life, and what is the main difference for you between human acting and animal puppeteering?
Okay, so again, when I was very, very young, a lot of the performances I did in my parents' back garden, mainly just for my parents and my sister when she would watch, was puppet shows. I used to put on little puppet shows. And some of you will remember the Sooty show, Sooty, Sweep and Sue, and I had all those puppets. And I would, so I've always been interested in puppets, but again, never thought that that could be a career choice, or I never thought that could match up with the music side of it, with the performing side of it, and everything coming together to make all my childhood dreams come true at the end of the day, you know. Yeah. But I first got into it seriously. I was hired as a voice actor on a children's TV show. And
do you mean like ZingZillas, or?
It was ZingZillas, a show called ZingZillas. So yes, Tang and Mr. Granite. I played Mr. Granite as well in that, and hired essentially as a voiceover artist. But what we would do, we would go into the studio and record that episode. There was singing in that one as well, so that brought the music side into it as well. And then we had to actually puppeteer the animatronic faces of our own characters.
Okay, so speaking about that, how old were you, just for a bit clarity, when you went into the ZingZillas?
I was 33, 32,
okay, so not
33.
Not at the very beginning of your career, was it?
Not at the very beginning. Puppets came in quite late on in my life, and it stemmed from there, really. I found that I loved it, and I think because of playing with puppets so much as a child, I found I had a knack for it as well. I found myself, one of the best auditions that I've ever had came from ZingZillas, and I found myself in a studio doing a recording with Elmo and Cookie Monster from Sesame Street, the actual puppets. They were trying me out for a new TV program. That was quite insane. And I had a bit of a weird flashback and looked back at my childhood and went, wow, look at you now. And then Avenue Q came along, and with Avenue Q, I had puppetry on my CV, and Lion King came along, and it all kind of snowballed, you know.
Yeah, okay. So just before we move on to Lion King, that is, I think, interesting for everybody because you're a part of it. I would like to ask you, what is that weird, like, zigzag on your wall behind you?
Okay, I'm also rather a Harry Potter fan, as well as being a Disney fan and a puppetry fan, etc., etc. It's actually a replica firebolt from the Prisoner of Azkaban movie.
Okay.
Yeah,
that is
it was a present.
Extremely interesting, actually. Yeah, that
it's
was
huge.
Just like, because it's not seen properly, you know, it's kind of like a bit, just a little bit. And
that's what it is. It is a firebolt broomstick. There you go.
So moving on to the Lion King that everybody waits for. Since you got the role of Zazu, you immediately said, this is a dream come true for me. And I never ever thought that this would ever happen to me. Lion King is so special. You've never seen anything like it. And that you love running down through the audience at the start and seeing 2,000 faces looking at you. So did you dream to become any sort of part in Lion King, like secondary character, or did you particularly want to become like Scar or main parts like Simba or something like that?
It was Disney, really. I've always absolutely adored Disney from a very, very early age. I've adored musical theatre from a very early age. I've adored performing, as I've already said. So to actually get that call when they said yes, when Disney called and they said, we would like you to play a Disney character, I felt a bit. It was just, it really was a lifelong dream. I burst into tears when I got the call. And
I think it's special to be a part of Disney,
secretly, I'll tell you a little secret here. I'd never seen The Lion King. until I got the role.
You mean like the musical or any
I'd
sort
never
of
seen the
like
musical. I'd seen the cartoon. I'd seen the original animation.
Okay.
I knew the original animation inside out and backwards.
Yeah.
But I'd never actually been able to get to see the show. So as soon as I got the role, I was like, I better go and see this. And I bawled my eyes. I'd heard about this incredible opening number and how it's one of the most incredible opening numbers in any show ever, but nothing prepared me for that sudden realization that even though you could see the actors and you could see the puppets and you could see how everything was done, your brain just switches on to the fact that this stage is suddenly chock-a-block full of animals. And your brain totally goes to that, and you don't lose that for the whole thing. It was magic, absolutely magical, and to be a part of that every night is I can't find words to describe.
I think that everybody who is in the performing arts world, even like tourists and everybody wants to become a part of it. I mean, Circle of Life to me is the greatest musical number ever. Like I've never seen anything as artistic and as like powerful as that. So
I mean, sorry, it's always been one of my favorite songs, and breaking it down, the melody, the chords underneath, the big key change just before the end, it can bring you to tears listening to that song alone. But actually seeing it in real life is very, very emotional, and being on the stage is.
So you said that you are a massive fan of musical theater. Just of my own interest, what is your favorite musical of all times?
Apart from The Lion King, you mean?
Yeah, obviously.
Apart from The Lion King, I do think that actually West Side Story is one of the greatest musicals ever written. It's always been a favorite of mine. I can listen to any version from all around the world and it still has that same powerful effect. And I'm so excited about the new Steven Spielberg movie. I can't wait.
So let's talk a bit about the Zazu and the puppet that you carry a lot. So what is the actual weight of the puppet and how hard is it for you to run around 10 shows a week singing, acting, and carrying that plastic and metal bird? And like since the beginning, did you go to any sort of gym or like doing any extra workouts that were needed for you to be able to perform this role?
Really, nothing more than I was doing at the time. But certainly, my forearms have got a lot bigger. They've sort of turned into Popeye, really. My forearms. No, I didn't. But actually, surprisingly, the puppet is very, very light. It's made of the same material that they make aeroplane wings out of. So it's extremely light. And a lot of the puppets look very heavy because they're painted to look like solid wood, but they're not.
Okay.
Give that away there.
Interesting.
Give that away. The most difficult thing about Zazu is actually getting the wings out because you have this mechanism. Zazu sits on your arm here, and you have this mechanism that you use with your hands.
Is it something like a trigger or something, yeah?
It's like a pulley on your left hand, and you pull this pulley thing down, and the wings fly out. But you have to kind of get it right in the correct place to be able to do that. But on the other side that controls the head, that's a trigger, which controls the beak up and down. And there's also a little circle that I put my thumb in, and doing that makes the eyes go big or makes the eyes close, etc. And then just the general movement and fluidity of the puppet, because essentially at the end of the day he's a bird, and birds don't fly. As if I was to walk with the puppet as a human, I tend to bounce up and down, but a bird wouldn't do that. So I have to stand on a bent knee. I have to run everywhere. So it looks like, and it almost feels like being a kid when you play aeroplanes and you go around the corner and one wing goes up and you're circling like that. It's almost like doing that. But it's two performances at the end of the day that you have to marry into one. And if the puppet's got to be an extension of yourself.
At this point, I have another question. And like puppeteers and you in person, because I've seen Zazu and yourself in Lion King, It's kind of, you're always on the background and the bird is actually in the view of everybody. So is there any sort of jealousy or some sort of like competition between you, Gary Jordan, and the Zazu, the bird, that is going on, so like that you are not seen and you're always on the background? Is there any sort of that thing?
Absolutely not, because we have to work together. We have to work as one. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You know, a lot of people, they come to see the show and they feel a little bit embarrassed to say that they only watched the puppet. But what happens, and the extreme genius of Julie Taymor, the original director, and the way that we're trained to use these puppets and to perform in The Lion King, what the audience don't realize they're doing is they might be watching the puppet, but in their peripheral vision, they can see your facial expressions. Yeah, so you're actually putting a lot of facial expression
and your voice
performance,
as well, obviously, because you're
and
singing.
the voice, obviously, and you have to impose that onto an inanimate object that's in front of you. You know, if I, as an actor, would look up that way, the puppet would have to do the same, and we have to work exactly as one for it to work, and why it works so well, you know.
All right, so 20 minutes have just gone by, so this is pretty much the end of the interview. I know the time flies extremely fast.
It really does.
The last question before we move on to the last part of the interview is, could you recommend any two people that I can contact and say that you recommended me to contact them to do similar types of talks, probably from Disney, Lion King, or like any other shows on West End or even Broadway?
Gosh, I mean, absolutely. Several people spring to my best friend, Diane Pilkington. You really should speak to her. She's the warmest, most beautiful soul. Done several West End shows. She's played Glinda in Wicked. She's recently come out of Only Fools and Horses in the West End. You should speak to George Asprey, who plays Scar in The Lion King. A just wonderful, wonderful friend of mine, and very, very interesting to talk to. Rhea Jones, you must speak to Rhea Jones, who very famously went on for Glenn Close one night in Sunset Boulevard.
Thanks.
And just beautiful and hilariously funny. So you really should speak to her as well.
Thanks for the recommendation. So the question from the audience that people were writing in the live chat is, which role would you like to play in 10 years' time if you're still staying in the performing arts world?
Gosh, in 10 years' time. I'd quite like to retire as Thénardier. I think Monsieur Thénardier in Les Miserables, I think, would be a lovely one to go out on.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And the last part of the interview, which I always do, is the advice part. So you having had such a wide background in everything, like directing, singing, acting, I don't know, probably producing, playing. Could you give the advice for people who are relatively young, like 18 or like university age, that are good in anything that they do, but they actually need to narrow this down and to choose the thing that they want to do professionally? So could you recommend something for them and give the advice for those kind of people?
I would say go for anything and everything and find your strength and play to that strength. You know, I didn't know my strengths when I was 18, 19. I didn't know. And I know, and I think find your strength, play to it, but try everything. Try absolutely everything. See what you love, see what you're best at, and then go for it with every fiber of your being.
Thanks. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it.
I
definitely did, finding so much more interesting stuff about you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Dan. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope to stay in touch with you in future.
Absolutely. That would be lovely. Thank you.
Thanks. So everyone, Gary is just gone. I hope that you enjoyed the interview. It was very intense. I personally find out a lot about him, and I was interested in how like Lion King and the Bird of Zazu was structured and how hard was it for an actor to carry it, but Gary has opened it up well for us. So thank you so much again for joining me today, and stay safe, be healthy, and stay entertained. I hope to see you again on Wednesday with the interview.